8,
You're watching
7,
Experience Comic Culture and
6,
Sales.
5,
Streaming live daily to
4,
Facebook, YouTube,
3,
Twitch, and Twitter.
2, 1.
Hey everybody, and welcome to The Experience. This is Talkin Shop, and I'm Miss Jen. I'm sorry about my little bit of hoarseness in my voice, but man, has the pine pollen just been falling down in droves here in the Houston area. If you are from Texas, you know what I'm saying. Those forest pollens are pretty bad. And a happy beginning of summer, spring break. Sorry, and I hope that maybe you're living in an area where there isn't spring break this week, but it's been crazy busy here. You see that Eddie's on. Hello. Now's the right time to maybe do some sharing, maybe to your friends to let them know. We're going to get to talk to Dirk Manning and the creative team behind the awesome new book that's coming out, Homestead. So you will definitely want to be here for this. We have the whole hour dedicated to him. We'll talk about this and other things that they're involved in. And we'll see you right back right after this. Well, hello, everybody. This has been a great day here. Good weather. Hope you guys are enjoying your ability to be out and about and not experiencing bad rain or, I don't know. Maybe you're in a place where it's cold enough to be snowy. That would be crazy. But we're super happy here because we had just a little bit of a cold front come through, which means we're, so more days between now and our next 106-degree summer. So super excited. I don't know if you're like me. I love a good horror tale. The spookier, the better. Or the more like this could really happen, the better. If it's based in actual lore, it's even better. So if you like that also, this is the show for you. I know Eddie's going to be really happy about this show. Everybody, welcome on Dirk Manning and the creative team from Homestead.
Hello. Thank you for having Les and I on today. Appreciate it.
Well, this is a true treat. I'm super excited about this. I know I've been seeing your updates on Facebook whenever you guys open up a new tier, and it seems like it's happening very often now. So everyone else obviously likes werewolf lore as well.
Well, good. This has been, I think Les has been involved with me in this project to some degree, at least verbally, for over a decade now. So it's been a long time coming. So we're excited that people are excited about Homestead.
Okay, so what happened first? Did you guys, you just like sitting around and come up with the idea? This is a concept that you guys came upon your own?
Well, therein lies a tale. I'll start and I'll volley to Les from there. This was Homestead, which people can see the whole campaign at homesteadcomic.com. That'll take you right to the Kickstarter page. You can check it out. Like you said, Jen, we've unlocked 6 stretch goals and counting. We're about halfway to the 7th stretch goal already, which bring your silver. That's the level we're at now, is like silver upgrades to the book. It's a Native American werewolf Western story. And yeah, buddy.
Ooh.
This is, that's one of our pledge levels. You can get the little werewolf heads. I'm going to give Les flowers on that in a minute, too, about how we designed all that. The origin of it, Homestead for me originally was a story I was going to maybe do in Nightmare World. Again, I'll put in one more cheap plug because we got a minute here. 20th anniversary. Yeah. Oh, look at that. Bam. You got, yeah. So 20th anniversary of Nightmare World just came out through Source Point Press. By the way, I love your wall behind you, Jen. That's amazing.
It's really good. Yeah.
Yeah, it's nice wall. This was originally a story that I considered doing as an 8-page story for Nightmare World. And, Nightmare World is 52 8-page stories. They're very brief. They're brief. They're fast. They get in and get out, jump in, tug at your heartstrings, pull your heart out and leave. But I realized that this story, I could do part of it in 8 pages, but really there was a bigger story there. So I decided to pull from Nightmare World, and I thought, well, I'll make it one of like the one-shot stories that would eventually become Love Stories to Die For. So I wrote a 22-page version of the story. But again, there was so much more to the story, and I felt like I was actually doing the story an injustice. So ultimately, I decided this needs to be more like a 4-issue miniseries type style book. And from there, it was just a matter of then finding the right artist for it. And I was familiar with Les's work. We had met at some different cons and things like that. I'm still going to say Cincinnati, but West will say Tricon. I'm still debating which one it was. It was one or the other, but
it was definitely Tricon.
So yeah, I think it was definitely Cincinnati.
I remember the year, and I still have your business card from that, and I didn't do Cincinnati that year.
Oh, then all right, then Les wins. So at a convention about 11 years ago, I
West Virginia, but continue.
Yeah, fair. So yeah, Tricon. We did meet it. We did talk at Cincinnati as well, though. At least give me that right. Am I?
Oh
am I
yeah,
right?
we did. We did after that. The first time we ever met was at Tricon in Huntington, West Virginia. I was across the aisle from him, trying to get exposure for a book of mine called Apocalypse Girl, which through Dirk eventually became a thing at Source Point Press. And
you were publishing at that point, right? Or were you just shopping the book altogether?
I was actually there with some folks on the inside of things will know this guy. I was there with Bob Hickey, who used to do he runs a Blue Line Press, does all the Blue Line paper products for like everybody.
Yes.
And he's actually out of Kentucky, which I'm a Kentucky boy. And he had picked me up to do Apocalypse Girl, but for a variety of reasons, I eventually moved out of that and into a relationship with Insane Comics, which was a good relationship, but there were some things going on with them that they ended up closing shop about 2 years into that relationship. And after about 3 issues did get released through them, but they strictly refused to go with Diamond for anything, which kind of hampered them. And I mean, my understanding is that mine was the only, if not one of maybe 2 books with them that actually made a profit. So,
yeah. I saw his work. I saw Les's work there, and I think we talked. I'm going to say this. I think we talked at Tricon, and I really liked your work. And I think I talked about Homestead at Cincinnati.
No, because I remember our first conversation ever.
Right?
Our first conversation ever. I had walked over, and I say our first conversation. I walked over to his table, looked at his stuff, and I was like, cool, pretty neat. Turn around, walk back over to my stuff, because I'm just like that. And I'm sitting there, and I remember I had a line of people like a mile long. My line was long enough that Billy Tucci got up from his table and came running over. He's like, what the hell is going on over here? I was like, dude, I'm like, oh, hi, it's Billy Tucci on my shoulder. Hey, Billy, what's up? And the line dies down. Eventually, Dirk comes over and starts looking at my stuff. And the first real conversation we ever had, other than me kind of looking at his work and grunting, was him.
It was a grunt of approval, for the record. So.
Oh, yeah. And if I see you at a con and I grunt, that's a good thing. But he's looking at my stuff, and he's like, I've got a story that you're the guy to draw.
Yep.
I mean, that was like the first actual sentence of words he ever said to me. And I've got a story, and you're the guy to draw it. And I was like, okay, tell me more. And he's like, Native American werewolf Western. I was like, I'm in.
Yeah, it was like, boom. It was like, you ever seen like 90 Day Fiance? This was like 90-second Fiance. Right?
It was just like shoot. It's like I was like, Native Americans, werewolves, Western, you've just dumped chocolate in my peanut butter, man. And threw some espresso in for good measure. I'm like, where do I sign? When do I start? Let's do this. And when I would start became 9.5 years later.
Right. But to be fair, because I said, this is a story I want to do. And to me, and I know Jen, we talked about this before. I always write to the artist. I very rarely start a project until I know who the artist, who my collaborator is going to be, so I can play to their strengths. When I saw Les's stuff on Apocalypse Girl, which was self-published time, and I think you even had like original pages there. I was like, man, this is it. This is it. So I told Les, I said, I've got a couple things in the hopper right now, and I said, I know you're working on Apocalypse Girl. And I said, as you get this done and I kind of get some of my stuff caught up, which was at the time, working through Nightmare World, I said, we're going to circle back and we're going to do this. And I said, let's stay in touch with each other. And we met again in Cincinnati.
Yeah.
And no, you're right, Les. You're right. Because Cincinnati is where I talked to you about taking Apocalypse Girl to Source Point Press.
That's where you first talked to me about that.
Yes.
Then the second time you talked to me about that was actually C2E2 a year later.
Yep.
When I was with Insane Comics and we were there set up, and you came over and said, how's it going? And I was like, oh, it's going pretty good, blah, 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 blah. Had a few issues out, and you were like, can you take a break for a minute? I was like, yeah. And I got up and you said, bring your book.
Yeah.
Like, okay. So I grabbed my book and I'm like, hey, Jim, we'll step away for a minute. Okay, cool. So I walk over and we're Jim. I love the guy, but he was super, super cheap about everything. I mean, the guy by day was a economics professor. So it stands to reason. So we were actually set up over in a vendor area. I mean, it was not a good spot to be set up in. So I walked with Dirk over to where Source Point was at. And they're like right across from DC Comics. Mm-hmm. And they're over with the big boys. And I'm like, where the hell is he taking me? So I go over there and I got the book with me. Travis from Source Point is over there just hustling and doing his thing. And he's just like, yeah, what? Yeah, what? What? What do you want? Dirk's like, Travis, this is the guy I told you about. Travis is like, I think he said something like, you tell me about a lot of people, Dirk, or some shit like that. I think Dirk was like, check out his book. And he looks over and I kind of quickly handed him a copy of Apocalypse Girl. And he goes, and Travis kind of waves it and goes, what'd you do on this? And I was like, all of it.
Everything. Yeah.
He's like, what do you mean all of it? I was like, writer, penciler, inker, letterer, colorist, cover painter. And he's like, okay. And he kind of flips through it. I'm so used to this. It's like, you've been around the business. You get used to people who are just like, yeah, whatever, And he's like, huh, look. And then about 2-3 pages in, he kind of starts to slow down and actually look. And then he kind of closes it, turns it around with a scowl on his face, looks and goes, the hell are you doing with Jim? I guess he knew the guy. I was like, he made me a pretty good offer. And he kind of flips it around, goes, well, I'd have taken this. And I'm like, well, I didn't know you. So fast forward, I think it was just a few months later. Mm-hmm. And a message went out through a private group from Jim that he was closing up shop. So I had been talking to Travis, just asking him a couple things about Source Point on Messenger. And I was like, hey, Travis, would you be interested in Apocalypse Girl? Insane Comics is closing down. And he's like, you got a release letter? So I immediately was like, hey, Jim, you got a release letter? He's like, had one waiting for you. Tosses it through, and I literally drag it from one window to the other, and boom, from that point forward, I was with Source Point Press for Apocalypse Girl, which came out, the full collected volume 1 came out in 2020. Mm-hmm. And with Apocalypse Girl, it kind of opened the door. I've been doing like a lot of different stuff. I've done a ton of covers and things since then, and it actually has. Apocalypse Girl did really well, and it's just been this constant thing. And then what was it? Late, let's see. I lost a year in my life here, so I have to think. Probably early 22.
Around there, yeah, because Apocalypse Girl came out, because at that point I was doing stuff with Source Point. And again, and Les is like peeling back the curtain of like anyone that works with me knows it's like I like Doctor Who show up. Okay, grab your books, come with me right now. Can't explain. Take it right over to Travis. But yeah, so we got Source Point, we got Apocalypse Girl picked up by Source Point, and it was around this time that I was getting ready to start really like moving into doing Homestead around this time. So I think the plan was, and I told you back when 10 years prior, 7 years prior to that point ever, I said, get Apocalypse Girl done. I said, by the time you're done, I'll be ready. And then of course, so everything happens, blah, blah, blah. Then of course, 2020, the world shuts down and everything goes sideways. So then it was about another year or so later when everything starts building back up. I think we started officially working on it late 21, early 22, I want to say.
I was doing like preliminary sketches and stuff about that time. And then I started actually working on page layouts and stuff later in 22.
Yeah.
So,
yeah.
And then, crap, man, I had pages getting done and different things going on for issue 1. And, I think I had finished issue 1. I'd finished issue number 1 and was started on number 2. And then I had a double stroke. Not fun. That was February of last year. And the message I sent to Dirk, I was like, hey, dude, never fear. Everything's going to be okay. I'm still working on the book, but I'm in the hospital. I've had a double stroke. And he's like, what the hell? And I'm like, don't worry, I'm still working.
Yeah. Come to find out, Les had a major double stroke, was in the hospital, on the hospital bed, still working on pages.
Yep. As they were putting me in the hospital, I had my iPad because I do a lot of my penciling digitally. And so I was penciling pages as they were putting me into the hospital. At one point, I had my iPad on my knee, and I look over the nurse who's putting tubes in me, and I was like, "Man, could you try not to shake me so much?" And she's like, "What are you doing?" I was like, "I'm working. Somebody's gonna pay for this shit." And I literally, I was in the hospital for 6 weeks. I think I did all of the layouts for issues 2 and 3 while I was in the hospital.
Because Les's thing was, I remember you saying this, and first I'm like, Les, I said, look, man, we've been working on, we've been in this script for a while, and I'm like, take the time you need to heal, right? I think I was pushing. I was like, look, we'll readjust. Don't worry, just get better, man. And Les said, I'll never forget this. He goes, I love this book, and he goes, if this book is gonna be the last thing I ever do, which is kind of gallows humor in a way, but if you know Les, that's very apropos. But he goes, if this book's the last thing I'm going to do, he goes, this book will come out and it will have my name on the whole thing.
What's kind of cool about it is it kind of feels like it also acts as physical therapy, right?
I mean, it psychologically, when you're in a position like that, because I'm not going to shortchange it. I was nearly dead. And like I ended up, they actually put me under, and I was completely out for 2 whole days in the ICU. And
half your body was paralyzed, right?
Yeah, I was fully left side paralyzed when I came to. I mean, everything was gone. Left arm, left leg. The left hand is still kind of wonky, and I'm working to get it back. But shit, I do probably anywhere from 3 to 6 hours a day in the gym on top of all the work doing the art. So that's just how it's got to be, But in the hospital, and especially through the early days of all this, when I was just like, oh my God, I may never have half my body work again. It was like, at least that right hand works. My right hand works, and I've got a book to do. And that purpose. If you've ever read Viktor Frankl's Man's Search for Meaning, there's a thing of the takeaway from the entire book, in my opinion, is the line that a man who has a why can survive anyhow.
Oh, wow.
And I was like, okay, I've got a book to do. I can't check out yet. Sorry. It's not time. It's not time. I can't check out. I can't quit. I can't stop. I got a book to do. There, I've got a purpose. So, and that seeing Homestead doing well is really meaningful to me because of that. Because it was just like, it was like, this is the book that I'm doing to stay alive in a certain sense. I mean, not to overplay it, but psychologically, it was a real anchor for me. And, I was glad to have it.
Yeah. And again, pull back the curtain, full transparency. Here I am. My friend had a stroke. It's like, no offense, like, screw the comic, man, get better. And when Les and I started talking and stuff like that, I think we jumped on the phone, when you were able to talk. And I told him again, because it's typing is one thing, right? And I know typing is not great. So I said, Les, we will do this book when you're ready. I said, there is no, I mean, I had a traumatic brain injury once. I understand that sometimes you get like locked into this, like this mode, right? And I kept trying to assure Les, I'm like, Les, it's fine. Take the time you need. And when it's time, it's time. And when it became so evident, two things happened. One, on a personal level, it became very evident to me that Les needed to do this. And I don't mean to speak for you, bro, but I mean, it was like, he's like, I need to do this. He's like, because again, we're talking a life and death situation here. And I'll never forget, Les kept saying, this book may be like my legacy. This might be the last thing I put out. So that was a personal thing. Now, the other thing, in full transparency, I'm going to say too, this dude got better after his stroke. He took all of his talent from his whole body, smashed it into half the body that worked, and like his art like doubled down. It was the damnedest thing. It's like professionally, I'm like, I'm worried about my friend, and I came to peace with the fact that he wants to do this to keep himself motivated, the why. But I'm like, I'm talking to Gina Joe and Dave Lentz and our colors, Colin Johnston. I'm like, he's like taking, and I said he took all the talent in his whole body, smashed it all into his right side, and now he's like doubled down and he's like leveled up in his art. And he was great anyway. Like he told you 10 years ago when I saw his stuff, I'm like, you're the guy for this book. I mean, that was it. I was like, boom. It was like, there's not going to be a discussion. Like, you are the one. So even like, the cover that you see of Homestead and stuff like that, on the Kickstarter page at homesteadcomic.com.
Stunning.
That's post-stroke.
Yes. Yeah. It's a long story to get into, but I've actually studied up on it in the year since and talked with my neurologists and stuff about a great deal about how, like, I noticed in the first week after the stroke, my vision was different. Like, I saw things differently. My perception of things was different. And that only lasted for a couple of weeks. But I know that looking at the MRIs, there were three portions of my brain that are all close together that were affected: motor core, emotional regulation, and inhibitions. And like, one of the dark parts of this is I did become a more emotional person since the stroke, which I hate because I'm like, kind of old school Spartan stoic kind of guy.
Grunting.
Yeah.
Grunting.
So, but, I think that having my inhibition center damaged slightly by the stroke actually was a gift, because the best way I can describe it is I think that I may have had subconscious rules placed on myself as an artist before, but when I started drawing after the stroke, I was just like, I felt free. And like I have, as an artist, this past year of my life, this past year has been easily one of the darkest, hardest times of my life, and yet I feel more free than I've ever felt before artistically. So, and I mean, I think I've drawn 6 going on 7 different books now. I mean, Homestead was originally going to be 4 issues, so when I say books, I mean issues. I've drawn at least 6 or 7 comics since the stroke, and done 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 paintings. I've done an absolute ton of work since the stroke, and like every piece of it has been just every one is like better than the last, and it's like wow, and there's this sick little part of me that kind of makes its peace with having had the stroke by saying, you kind of needed it. You kind of needed what this has given you. So,
great insight.
That's not a call for anybody to go out and try to have one, though. They suck. Yeah. Not a good time.
All right, let's hold on to this. I love where we're going with this, and we do have some questions that have been asked, and it'll be about kind of like what your inspirations are. But we're going to take a really quick break so our sponsors have a moment in the sun, and we'll be right back.
Go.
You know how when you go to Comic-Con, after Comic-Con, you go to the hotel bar, and there's a whole bunch of people playing music and dancing, and you've got Pikachu and Lara Croft Tomb Raider doing the cha-cha slide just down from Deadpool and Batman and Wonder Woman? That's every Saturday night over on the Experience Twitch channel. Join Taji Beats for the EXP Dance Party, exclusively on Twitch, twitch.tv/the_EXP. Why was Princess Zelda sad after watching a bunch of YouTube videos? She couldn't find the link in the description. We'll stop if you subscribe to our YouTube channel. It's super easy. Click subscribe and click the bell when you do. And thanks for supporting the EXP.
Everybody, we're back. This has been like really eye-opening. I love this. This is like getting really deep. Thank you for being willing to share your heart about this, Les. This is really, really cool, special.
It's all history at this point. So. Oh
yeah. Okay. I think I see. There's a question from Leonard Pig. Is there anything above that? Because I know that we had some people throw in some questions up. I think this one could go to either one of you guys. What's the comic that inspired you to become a creator?
Oh, I'm curious about that one for Dirk.
I have a trifecta. I didn't start reading comics till I was a teenager, and in very rapid succession, I read Dark Knight Returns, Watchmen, and The Crow. Boom, boom, boom.
Oh yeah.
I would say, like, not to put myself on that level. But if you want to take like like my comic book DNA, Dark Knight Returns, Watchmen, and The Crow, and that's how you get Dirk Manning. I'm a horror guy at heart, and I love horror. And then you go back and you discover a lot of the EC stuff and all that. But I mean, like the DNA of me, those 3 things taught me so much about the medium and how to study the medium, and inspired me to tell the stories I wanted to tell in this medium.
Yeah, for me. I grew up as a, frankly, dirt poor kid in Appalachia. It's why I always call out Huntington, West Virginia, and Tricon, because that's Appalachia country, man.
Yep.
I always got to give props to my people out there. But like I didn't have indoor plumbing until I was 11. So. And I literally had a stack of old comic books that they had left in the barn at 5 years old. There was a stack of comic books, and I'd have to go milk cows. And I would be milking a cow, and I'm sitting there with a teat. So we'll keep this family friendly. We use the TEAT word in my hand and a comic book on my leg. And I remember as a little kid, I was fascinated by the fact that there was this list of names at the bottom of the splash page, and it would say who did what. And as a little kid, when I saw Neil Adams, saw that name, and I was reading, I forgot the issue number, but it was a Man-Bat issue of Batman. And that was just the most life-changing pages of artwork. I mean, and that's life-changing at like 5-6 years old.
Oh, yeah.
And then when other little kids would want to play, superhero crap and all that stuff, I'm Batman, I'm Superman, I'm Spider-Man. I'd be like, I'm Neil Adams, I made you. That no joke. I mean, that was, the other kids all thought I was just bonkers. But and fortunately, I had a father who was who had actually didn't collect, but he recalled. He was an older man, born in 1919, and he could recall reading comics back in the 20s and 30s, or 30s and 40s.
Oh, wow.
And so he thought it was interesting that I had these books, and he would look at them. He's like, oh, these have grown up. These are really interesting. And he pushed me really hard as a kid. He saw that I had an aptitude for art. And when all other people in, rural Appalachia around me were making fun of me for being this artsy, weird kid, my dad was like, don't listen to him. He's like, this is your ticket out of these hills. You keep working on that.
Did you get any formal training, or did you just like self-taught all the way?
I had the good fortune of attending what, and I may hate myself in some ways for saying this, attending what I am going to go on record and say was the best high school in Kentucky. Definitely the best one in Appalachia. I had a graduating class of 93 people total. I mean, it was tiny. But I had this art teacher named Carol Osborne, and sometimes she sees me out on streams and thinks, so Carol, this was for you. And through her, I ended up getting to do about 2.5 years of independent study in high school on art.
Oh, wow.
And I spent the last 2 years of high school, I was spending like 6 hours a day in the art room. And I had to achieve a bunch of things academically for them to let me do that. So, and I did that, but my last 2 years of high school were pretty much all art, then a required history class. They required me to do another elective, and it had to be an academic related elective. So I did Russian. I actually speak Russian.
Oh, wow. Я хочу super.
What's that?
Я хочу super.
Здравствуйте. But
It's the only Russian I know.
Oh man, good times. Riot. But good Lord. But yeah, I did 2 years of Russian in high school, and the 1 year of college that I went, I still did Russian there. So I had 3 years of it 30 some years ago. So it's still there, but it's foggy. And I was obsessed with comics. I mean, as I grew up, like I remember the English class I had in my sophomore year of high school. We had to do it was really wild. We had to do basically a thesis paper in AP English. We had a couple of them to do that year. So I did one on the history of comic books and censorship. That was about a 30-page paper on Dr. Frederick Wortham and his effect on things in the 1950s and how that rippled forward into the censorship of the 80s and 90s. And then I did, what's that?
Do you have that paper still?
I wish I did. The teacher,
I want to read that.
The teacher whose class I did that in actually is the namesake of a character in some stories that I've written through the years that plays into the other paper that I wrote at the time. That was a whole thing about H.P. Lovecraft. So yeah, and that's a whole other thing. But yeah, all that really started with Neil Adams and Man-Bat in a barn in Eastern Kentucky. So
That's awesome.
What a great origin story.
It's wild.
Really great.
The best thing about that story for me ever was the one show I got to do in support of Apocalypse Girl in 2020. I was scheduled for 35 shows that year. I got to do one, and it was in New Orleans, which is special in and of itself.
Mm-hmm.
And Neil Adams was there. And the convention was dead. There was hardly anybody there. So I go over and I'm watching him do a sketch for a minute. And I'm just watching and being super chill. And he looks up at one point, and I just stuck my hand out. And I was like, I just want to shake your hand and thank you for what you've been to me. And he's like, okay. He's like, what do you mean? I was like, oh, well, you know, and I said, I was like, I draw, I've done art for a living my whole adult life, blah, blah, blah. I've done comics and so on and so on. And, you know, and I just quickly said, I was like, I, you know, first fell in love with comics as a little kid with a Man-Bat issue of Batman that you did on my knee while I was milking cows. And he thought that was hilarious. And then said something about growing up that way. And it had something to do with growing up poor. And I told him, I just dropped the little nut that I was like, yeah, I was like, you know, I didn't have indoor plumbing until I was 11 years old. And he looks at me and goes, you know, I was about that age when I got indoor plumbing too. and then he was like, come have a seat.
Oh,
and
nice.
He sat me down next to him, and I literally got to hang out with Neil for 2 hours plus. I was like, I don't care if they rob my table blind. I do not care. This is like, I mean, for me, it was like God himself had said, come sit by my throne, son.
Mm-hmm.
And, you know, I got to sit there and watch him draw the master. There are two, again, in my opinion, in comics, for me, there is a holy trinity. There is Jack Kirby, Neil Adams, and Bernie Wrightson.
Oh, Bernie. Yeah.
Oh, Bernie. I mean, Bernie, like the influence of Bernie in my stuff is literally, I think, the seed of what created the friendship with me and Dirk. So
yeah, in fact, with Bernie Wrightson, obviously a huge influence on me as well. And one of the things that Les and I would banter back and forth all the time, you're like, get a Bernie on. Get a Bernie on in this book. I mean, literally, it was like Bernie became like an adjective, a verb, everything. It's like,
I totally want to have some shirts made up for myself that said WWBD. What would Bernie do?
Yeah, that was a common theme on Homestead, is, you know, like getting our Bernie on and stuff like that. You know,
I mean,
Bernie Wrightson drew Jennifer, written by Bruce Jones, which for my money is one of the all-time best short horror stories ever dedicated to the comic book medium.
Well, as a kid, I mean, I was very fortunate in this weird way that I had a stepbrother who had this Foot Locker full of old comics, and that's where a lot of these came from. So, you know, there was the stuff in the barn. Then I stumbled onto what he had, his stash, and there was a lot of old eerie and creepy stuff in there. A lot of old first printed Bernie Wrightson stuff. Bernie Wrightson and Steve Ditko. And man, I just, you know, we didn't have TV. We barely had radio where I lived, but I had those comics. And I mean, I would sit and pore over those for hours. I would take wax paper out of my granny's kitchen, and I could barely see through it. And I would lay that wax paper down over it at like 5-6 years old and trace that artwork. Just like you could scratch into the wax and leave these white lines. So I was tracing that artwork with these white lines on this stuff over and over. And, you know, it's crazy, man. It's just really crazy. You know, through the years, I kind of learned that process and stumbling into doing that like I did at a very young age kind of wired my brain funny around the stuff. You know, it just.
What do you mean by that?
I mean, I'm just wired to do this stuff. You know, it's at this point, you the one of the other crazy things since the stroke is when I'm penciling a book or when I'm drawing, because I pencil and ink, I end up averaging about 4 pages a day. So I mean, it's just, I look back and I'm like, yeah, I was meant to do this. I was wired to do this. All the pieces, a very strange set of pieces, were there from an early age that just kind of, those together with the influence of my father and my own personal attitude was just like, yeah, this is the thing. So,
and I want to volley off that too, Les, because you make a good point. We talked about this before the break. As soon as I saw Les's art, I knew that, like, man, he's got the Wrightson thing going. I mean, this is the artist, like, to collaborate on Homestead with. But then the other piece of that was I realized, okay, great artist, mild to moderate writer. But the problem is that I realized as I started taking this from what was originally an 8-page to a 22-page story, like an 88-page story, was I realized that, I didn't realize I was a middle-aged white guy from the Midwest, but, I knew that already. But I realized that to tell this story authentically, I really needed someone that could really speak about the Lakota culture and stuff like that. And Rao Blackhawk was going to be with us today. He got a cold. So, Rao, we're thinking of you, man. But I want to give Rao his flowers, too, on this, because obviously, having a strong editor is important. And then Colin Johnson, our colorist, is amazing. Dave Lentz does our lettering design. He's great. But for me, that missing piece of the puzzle really came in then, meeting Rao Blackhawk. And I actually met him on Facebook through a group dedicated to celebrating the Lakota culture, the Sioux Lakota culture. And what ended up happening was Rao's a big comic book guy and stuff like that. So before we actually started, like, Les was doing character designs and stuff like that, there's that part of me like, okay, we're there. We got the look. We know what we're going to be doing here. Now I got to put the script to the test. And I gave it to Rao, and I said, Rao, this is what I didn't tell him exactly what it was at first when I was kind of soliciting for, like, a creative consultant to help with the Lakota culture. And I told him, I just told him it was a comic book and it featured Lakota culture. And I wanted to make sure that I was representing the culture appropriately and using the proper terminology and things like that. So then I kind of told him, I said, well, I don't know if you know a lot about my work, but I'm a horror guy. And I said, this is a Native American werewolf Western. And he's like, oh, that sounds great. And Rao, again, metal guy, like Les and I, is a big heavy metal guy. He's a comic guy, like horror stuff. And he started reading it, and he told me, he goes, first thing, brother, because I'm going to tell you, I love the story. I'm like, okay, hurdle one. Yeah, woo! Because a lot of people, when they think of, like, Native American culture and werewolf stuff, they think of, like, skinwalkers. But skinwalkers are not part of Lakota culture, right? To my credit, I researched this for, like, almost 10 years, researching this story, putting this together. So I knew we couldn't do the skinwalker route. We had to do something different. And I'm not going to say, I don't want to give away the book of how this happens. So we got that part done. But then he goes, so the story's great. But he goes, like, I'm not sure what some of these words are. And I said, well, like, what do you mean? And he goes, like this word here. And I said, oh, well, I've done a lot of research on this. And I thought that was like the word that a Sioux Lakota would use for, like, a white person or a settler. And we're at a Zoom thing, and he started laughing, and he goes, this is gibberish. He goes, this isn't anything. It isn't even a word. And I asked him, I said, okay, first, I believe you. But I said, I'm just taken aback because, like, I want you to know, get part of that. You always want, a lot of times our knee-jerk reactions to protect our ego. But I also wanted to pass that. I wanted to be transparent with him. I said, I'm shocked. I said, I've researched this for, like, 10 years and consistently, this seems to be the terms for these things. And he said something that I think ultimately became very baked in to the theme and the story we told in Homestead. We did the final draft, and the script, which was, I said, why do you think it is that everywhere I looked, this was the term they used? I said, how do you think so many people got it? Why do you think so many people got this wrong? And Rao just says, he goes, because no one cares. And it just hit me so hard in the chest
Mhm.
because, I mean, Alan Moore coined a phrase years ago that stuck with me forever. It's become an earworm: the human centipidification of culture, right? Just people regurgitating it. Yeah, you're welcome, Les. But regurgitating the same thing over and over. And he goes, one person puts something online. He goes, it spreads everywhere, which I guess is a parable for the internet, right? One person says one thing and it spreads everywhere. It becomes the truth and the gospel. But he goes, this isn't it. So he really helped us make sure that the cultural representation of the Sioux Lakota people was appropriate. And even, whether it be in the dialogue, there was bits in like the coloring with like the color of like paint they would wear in different ceremonies and things like that, meaning different things. And my favorite one, and again, I don't want to give too much away the story, but there's a part where it's one of the members of the Lakota says to another one, "I love you." And Rao goes, we have love, obviously. He goes, but we don't say "I love you."
Mhm.
And I'm like, how do you express that? And again, Homestead is a very emotionally resonant book. It's a very powerful emotionally book. It's not a book of good guys and bad guys, right? It's about people and people struggling and how far they're willing to go protect their family. And Rao said, well, what we would say is, and how we say we express that sentiment is, he goes, I will suffer for you.
Oh, wow.
Right.
Yeah.
And that, it was so powerful because like that's ultimately the theme of the book, and it became the theme of the book even more so with Rao's involvement. It's how do you express your devotion and your caring and your love to someone? And the Lakota say, I will suffer for you. And that became very much a thread through the book as well, just as much as the idea that the Lakota were looked at by the U.S. government in the story and in history as like an afterthought. Like, yeah, we can just give away your land in the Homestead Act. That's fine. Don't worry about it. But then when the scene in the book where they say to each other, I will suffer for you. This is an intense read. It's very much a horror book. It's very much, like Les said, very get her Bernie on, right? Get her Bernie Wrightson on and pay tribute to that. But I also wanted to tell a story that was very culturally representative of the struggle of not only the Lakota people, but also Bill, our main character, who moves his new family out west, get away from some things that are happening where he is. And then what happens when, and Les said it before, he goes, if there's a bad guy in this book, it's the government. But puts these two families at odds, and then how far they both are willing to go to protect their families and their way of life.
That dynamic was probably the thing that in one of our first real serious conversations about the book that I was like, okay, I was like, I could see a way that one group of people would tell this story, and there's a bad guy and there's a good guy, and that's that. I can see a way another group of people will tell this story. There's a bad guy and a good guy, and that's that. And then those two versions, those things are flipped from each other. And I was very concerned about that because I was like, if I'm kind of a history buff. I love this stuff. And I was like, dude, what are you doing here? And I was very concerned about it. It would be very easy for a story like this to turn into pandering in either direction.
Yeah, exactly.
Either direction.
That's not the way Dirk writes, though.
And when I got the script to issue 4, I immediately messaged him. I said, I was like, I don't even have to have read everything you've ever done. This is the best thing you've ever written. Period. Bar none. This is the best damn thing you've ever written because damn son, did you thread that needle exactly right. Exactly right. And I was like, and when he said, he's like that I had said, I was like, the bad guy in the story is the government, because it really is the government who sets up the situation that puts these completely innocent families at odds with each other to where they have the situation. And I'm just like, oh my God, that is so perfect on so many levels. like that. It is an honor to have gotten to draw what I believe is the man's best piece of writing yet.
Thank you.
So we posted.
I'm just glad it was worth the wait, Les. I'm glad it was worth like the 9-year wait when I said we're going to get.
Yeah, well, next time you want to pull out your magnum opus, let's try to switch it up a little bit.
There was a lot of things we both had to get through. We both had to get through to get there, but we got there.
Oh yeah.
We've got posted up in the comments there for all the different places you guys are watching us on YouTube and Twitch and all those places. We've got the link so you guys can, that jumps you straight to be able to support the Kickstarter, which is already made. So there's no risk of not getting to read this awesomeness. It's just how much other cool stuff you want to go with it.
You want all the cool stuff. Trust me.
Show them real quick so like one of the pledge levels you can get a little higher. Yeah, look at that. That's the werewolf mini bust that you can get. Unless actually, not only draw the whole book, he also actually designed the bust, the mini werewolf bust as well. So like when you pledge for the wolf pack or the Give Me Everything, my favorite pledge level in any Kickstarter do is the Give Me Everything, because you get the Kickstarter exclusive hardcover edition of the book, all the stretch goal stuff. You get the T-shirt with that amazing cover by Les on it, but then you also get the mini werewolf bust. And Les designed those, sculpting those. He's hand painting those himself as part of the campaign.
So they're all going to be the silver.
What I do outside of comics is 3D modeling and animation. Specifically, I do a lot of sculpting now for collectibles and things, and so we're running these out of my shop. So these are being like, nothing against anybody, I mean, because not every artist can sculpt or whatever. So you get a book out there, it's got some collectibles and things with it. Very cool. But I dare you, if there's another book out there where the artist on the book has sculpted and is producing his own collectibles for the book, I want to meet him just so we can hang out, so I can have somebody to have that in common with. So there's these guys, and then there's actually a full, it's like 12 or 13 inch big.
Yeah, like a full 13-inch werewolf.
Raging werewolf. There's only going to be 13 of those. And those are full color, because after they are produced, I'm hand painting all those for everybody.
Oh, shoot.
So
runs over, gets one of the 13.
Yeah.
All right. We're going to take a really quick break. And then if you guys will stick around, we're going to give away a cool thing to somebody here that's watching the show.
Go.
We want to have your support for that. Excellent.
Jen, since there's only 4 minutes left,
we just want to go ahead and do it.
Yeah, we'll just go ahead and do it.
So real quick, stop listening to this awesomeness. It's my bad.
I know it's really hard. I understand. So real quick, everybody, before we draw, if you've already won, you're ineligible to win again. So if we hit your name, we're going to have to re-roll. There's only one win per household. So if somebody in your household's already won, you can't win this either. Sorry. It's only available in the 50 United States and Canada. And after we choose the winner, 1, I'll show you the book you're going to win. But 2, there's going to be a special link for you to fill out. You have 24 hours to fill this link out, or you forfeit the book, and I'd hate to see that happen. So,
can guests enter this too? By the way, just checking.
Well, sir, you're not part of the experience.
Just type in hashtag EXP Thanks real fast.
I saw the hashtag going in. I want to hurry up and throw it in there.
But all right, we're going to spin this, and good luck, everyone.
Fingers crossed for everyone.
While that's running, I see a comment from someone, Tekken Freak 234 in the chat. Says, I want to learn how to sculpt. If you check out my YouTube channel, 6S1 Media is the name of my studio. I've got a ton of videos up there with time lapses and different things about digital sculpting.
Oh, awesome.
Oh, and Don won.
Way to go, Don.
Congratulations.
I love that avatar. That little dog was amazing.
And you have won. As soon as I pop it up here, hold on. Avengers Twilight #1, a 1 in 100 by Felipe Masafera.
Oh my gosh. John, if you don't want that, I will buy it from you. That's a really, if you guys didn't read Avengers Twilight, it is as close as you're probably going to get to experiencing lightning in a bottle that like Kingdom Come was. It's that good.
Oh, wow.
I haven't read a comic from Marvel or DC in probably 20 years.
Well, read that one then.
There you go. There's a one to start with.
I might give that one a shot.
If you can find it, it's real hot right now. All right, thanks everybody for being here. Thank you guys so much. Thanks, Les and Dirk, for all your awesome time and giving it your heart and just putting it out here for us so that we can get to know you guys really well. And stick around. Thank you for being here for Talkin Shop. Let your friends know so you can come and have these wonderful moments again. And thank you for being here. See you guys next time.
Cool. Thank you, John.
Later, y'all.
Join the party. Head over to our link tree to find all the links for everywhere the experience is all the time.